Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another week of BlastCast. I am Jarvis, and with me, as always, is my bastion of common sense, Lightning Dragon. And, of course, we are still kind of out there waiting for 3.0, and it looks like we're definitely not going to be getting it before any sort of iteration before Gamescom. Now, they did give us an update in the ATV segment they now call Burn Down, where they basically give us a walkthrough of the problems they're having, the difficulties. They showed some footage of the ground vehicles having problems, like with the wheels and other things like that. But they did give us an updated visual on the production schedule. Last week, there were 14 blockers that would prevent it even going to Evocati. This week, it's 12. They kind of gave us a graph showing basically how much, where they were, where they are, how many they created in the process of eliminating other bugs. And that's kind of the nature of programming. You fix one thing, you break another. But I do have to admit, I do like the openness that they're showing in this segment. That kind of thing, to me, is worth more than any hard dates. And I wish they would approach it like this more often than setting out any dates whatsoever, because I think having more realistic expectations and goals is a lot better, a lot healthier for the community of the game overall. Now, the largest part of the segment from around the verse was about the MobiGlas. Now, I'm not going to cover too much about this because, in some regards, it was kind of a recycling of a lot of things we already did know. It had a lot to do with the render to texture tech, and it does look amazing, though. I like the fact that you can navigate with it. It'll show the planets. It'll show the solar system. You can kind of zoom in or zoom out all the way down. Like if you land on a planet, you can see the terrain around you, what their goal is going to be on that. The one thing you have to be, when I looked at it, I was thinking about this. When you use it, you're going to have to be careful of where you use it, because it is a persistent thing, meaning that if you're looking at something and someone's looking at you, they're also looking at it. So if you're trying to set, I don't know, if you're trying to set a destination, or if you're trying to whatever, someone else can see exactly what you're doing. So just be aware of your surroundings, kind of like at an ATM machine. You don't want to make it easy for pirates, okay? So find yourself a nice dark room, nice dark closet away from everybody, and then look at your MobiGlas. Otherwise, your ATM code...
Jarvis is telling you to go into the closet before you do anything.
Exactly.
I like you'll be able to see it as far as other players, because that's kind of one of the things, like in Interstellar Rift, that'd be like, it'd be really nice. It's like, okay, this is the thing I'm looking at, and Jarvis walks up to the console, and it's like, I don't see what you're looking at. So it'd be like, okay, We'll go into here, go into here, go into here. This is what I'm looking at. And I mean, I would like that in Interstellar Rift, but I mean, that's you walking up to a console and using it, more like an ATM, something that's fixed. But you just pulling up your arm, being like, I'm just going to log into my bank account, and here's my password. It's 8675552W, and someone's like, oh,
I thought it was 8675309.
No, that's something else.
Okay.
Damn you, Tommy Two Tones.
No, yeah. So you have to be careful when you use something like that. And I think they said the actual consoles where you're going to be picking up missions are not going to be viewable by other players. They're not going to see exactly what you're doing. Now, some people were upset about that, but in some regards, well, think about those laptops you have, or if you're sitting off to an angle that the screen is basically black.
Modern day ATM machines have that built into it, so if you're not, within a certain distance at a certain angle, you can't see the screen. It's just a bunch of blackness, and you might be able to, they have a window open, and then there's a window behind that, and that's all you really see. Trust me, I've been to ATMs before.
So yeah, that's about everything there on Around the Verse and covering the MobiGlas and the Burn Down segment. But what we really kind of wanted to talk about this week, last week we talked about the virtual stick and how CIG needs to get out there and give mouse users a really good, solid virtual stick that holds its shape and gives nice visible boundaries so that players can get used to using that device and actually basically become better at using fixed weapons. Kind of just level the playing field in that regard. So we were going to talk about acceleration this week, but what happened instead was that we started looking at some of the information at Star Citizen Database, and I'll leave a link down below. We were looking at the Hornet, so I'll leave you a link to that down below. If you want to go ahead and click on that and follow along on another screen or whatever, you're absolutely welcome to do that. We looked at the numbers because I was trying to figure out where exactly they're pulling their thrust values from, how much they're supposed to be, and then try to determine why the flight model is the way it is. So let's go ahead and put that on the screen here and kind of walk through a little bit of this with you real quick. Now this lists all the thrust values. We're going to go to the thrust column on the right as newtons, and I just kind of converted to kilonewtons. You basically just move the decimal place over 3. And the Hornet is listed here as having thrust forward of 3,952 kilonewtons, thrust back of 2,852 kilonewtons, thrust up, which is really weird, at 5,410 kilonewtons, considering the fact that thrusters are supposed to pull from the mains, somehow being way more than the actual mains is extremely odd. Thrust down at 3,098 kilonewtons and thrust lateral at 2,705 kilonewtons. Now, I didn't know a lot about the kilonewtons and things like that until Lightning's kind of explained it to me. And we'll go over some footage here in just a short while of our tests using these values in Star Citizen mechanics and kind of show you, these need to be reworked. But you go down.
It was really fun making this video too.
So, if you go to the center bottom column, and this is where it gets really weird, like angular thrust gets insane. Like the angular thrust positive yaw, the third one down in the angular area, is 6,809 kilonewtons. So it doesn't appear to be any rhyme or reason to that. So let me get into why these numbers are a little nuts and explain it a little bit more thoroughly, because it's just on the surface, if you don't know much about it, and I didn't really know much about it either, it doesn't really stand out to you too much. And I've never really been, I'm not an aeronautics engineer, I'm not a physicist, but I found this all to be very interesting. So the average MAVs to main ratio using their kilonewton standards was 88.9% power on average, and that includes even the overpowered thrust up is your MAVs. So whatever your mains is, mains power is listed as, your MAVs are 88.9% as powerful, which to me is a major problem, because it's partially why, if not almost exclusively why, you see ships all kind of flying the same, and you'll see a lot of this repeated throughout, is at this extremely high MAVs ratio. And if you look at, for example, the acceleration factor they have, and the only part I'm going to touch on this, most things accelerate anywhere from like 5.2 to like 2.2 seconds to like top speed. Like cruise time is like 5.2, and normal speed in combat in about any direction is right around 2.2 seconds. And really, that's a very fast acceleration, and we'll get into that a little bit deeper later, but we're going to get into the thrust and explain why these numbers need to be reworked entirely. So we have the modern Harrier. I felt that was a fair comparison to look at for the Hornet, because it's a plane that we've had, it's established, it's been around a while, it's got MAVs, it can do VTOL. So I want to know, how much does the most recent version of the modern Harrier have? Well, according to what I found on Wikipedia, and of course take a Wikipedia with a grain of salt as always, it's 105 kilonewtons to get the Harrier out and flying. Now compare that to the number I just told you, the 3,952 on the Hornet. It's a big difference. That's 37 times less than what the Hornet has. A Harrier that's fully loaded has a mass of 14,100 kilograms, 58% of the Hornet's weight fully loaded. So basically, I made a guess, and we ended up kind of proving it out here, and we'll go over that in a minute, that it would need, that if a Harrier was about the same weight as a Hornet, it would only need about 150 kilonewtons to do the same task. And I think that what we found is that's pretty correct, because we're talking, but then we're adding and getting into space, so we had to add more to that. And it kind of comes out in the ballpark of what we talked about before we did the test, so that worked out really well. So there's a big problem here with their kilonewtons to start off with. The Harrier's top speed is 295.83, repeating, meters a second. And anyone, of course, who knows that flies the Hornet, that the Hornet doesn't even come close to that speed. There's a big difference there.
And I believe the speed of sound is like 393 meters per second or something about that.
Yeah, something in that area.
That's at sea level, obviously.
Well, I'm going to give you some other examples here. The Saturn V first stage rocket has 34,000 kilonewtons of thrust. That's a lot, but it's only 8.6 times more thrust than is listed in the Hornet. And the Saturn V weighed 2,970,000 metric kilograms, or that kg squared. So
I'm not sure what they mean by squared, but kg is kilograms, and you remove the last 3, it becomes tons. So you're looking at 2,970 metric tons.
Yeah. So there you go. As I said, I'm not an aeronautics engineer. So the Hornet weighs a ridiculous amount less, but has thrust that's actually kind of in the ballpark. And the main engine of the glider portion of the space shuttle, each engine, there's 3 of them on the back. Each engine produces 1,756.34 kilonewtons of thrust at sea level, and 2,090.66 kilonewtons of thrust in a vacuum per engine, and there are 3 of them. So the individual little MAVs on the space shuttle in space each produce, or the total combined of the entire ship is 53.4 kilonewtons. So as you can see, these numbers, I mean, the Hornet's got more thrust than basically 2 of the main engines of the space shuttle glider. That's amazing. And the space shuttle itself, empty weight, weighs about 78 tons. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the video and kind of get into discussing what we did. We actually applied these thrust values. We're going to build a Hornet and try to fly it with realistic values, so we'll go from there.
Accurate game ever when it comes to space physics simulations, and that is Kerbal Space Program. No, obviously I'm kidding.
And we'll get into all of that here in just a second. Let's go ahead and load that up.
So, obviously Kerbal Space Program is, not like the best simulation ever. Obviously NASA doesn't use it, but it is a game that uses physics, and it does physics pretty well considering that. And you know what? Star Citizen is also a game, so I figured it's pretty close. So obviously what we're looking at doesn't look anything like the Hornet, because I was trying to get the same mass level, and when I made this I had some little extra fuel tanks on the side that made it look more Hornety, but it weighed like 10 tons, and the Hornet weighs like double that. So to make the same weight, I put this monstrous fuel tank engine on here, so we're getting a crazy amount of drag. And later in the clip, you'll actually see when I click on the engine, and it's producing about 175 kilonewtons of force.
Yeah, and this thing actually was able to almost all the way get to space before it just ran out of power. But this is a thing with a lot of drag. This is like very basic, very thrown together. But even with this amount of kilonewtons of force, it was almost able to leave the atmosphere, as you can see here. So obviously at that weight, you don't need 3,000 some odd kilonewtons of force to pull this off. And in fact, he's losing a little weight. So let's be generous here and say that Star Citizen.
I am burning fuel at this point quite rapidly, even though I have a stupidly, ridiculously fuel-efficient engine. This is actually one of my hand-modded engines. It's not an actual mod. I just went in there and tweaked the values because I didn't actually set for unlimited fuel, because this ship is probably like 70% fuel, right?
And there we go.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't have enough lift, and there's so much drag that I just lose control of the vehicle.
But being generous, we give them 200 kilonewtons, it would have probably made it. Okay, so here we go with this is a full power, all the way normalized, like for the stats you saw with the 3,000 something kilonewtons. The pilot instantly loses consciousness. The thing spins out of control. We have to take the wings off this thing, so it just can't handle it. And
it doesn't like the vertical flight. The way the wings are set up just screws with its center of lift. I had to go in there and take them all off just to get a baseline test.
It looks like a flipping penguin.
But you had a conversation with Alienware about these.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go. I got some quotes from him. I'm gonna read towards the end, and we had a good discussion about this. So yeah, we had to strip the wings off, as you can see here, and now look at the pilot's instantly unconscious. It buried the needle.
4 or 5 seconds after this is 15.
Okay,
plus
atmospheric reentry effect. It explodes in the atmosphere from going so fast from the heat.
Yeah.
Okay, that and I mean the needle on the G forces only goes to 15 Gs in Kerbal. We buried it. So when you see a little picture on the right, the guy if it goes white noises out, that's because your pilot's asleep. Now here you're just trying to dink up the throttle.
Yeah, right now what's going on is I put on the G-force, not G-force limit, but atmospheric pressure limit. So basically, it's going up to 20,000 psi or pounds.
Yeah, you're doing.
I don't know if it's psi or whatever.
Yeah, you're doing about 380 meters a second right now.
Yeah, we've broken the sound barrier at this point. I turned that thing off. Actually, I double it and I double it again, and eventually you can see it as it gets faster and faster. I mean, there's 10 Gs. Oh, we're about to go to 15. Boom, we've pegged 15 Gs.
Yeah, we're
full
asleep.
Power. We've lost consciousness. Now it's
and yeah. So I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems maybe we just don't need this much thrust in Star Citizen. I don't know. Maybe they need to review these numbers. All right. So yeah, that was successful. So here we go, trying to take it. Now we're gonna break the sound barrier before we even leave the runway.
Yeah, I don't know if we completely break it, but we're really close to it.
Yeah, boom. There you go.
Boom. That's
yeah. There we go. Okay, that didn't work so well, but hey, first you don't succeed, respawn, reverse.
Well, actually, at this point, I realized that my center of lift was a little bit weird, and I had to fix it. And I just go full blast again, and the wheels actually are causing drag.
Yeah.
And then we just ripped one of the wings off because of the atmospheric weight.
Yes, this doesn't look like a Hornet at the moment. We had to make it work for the weight and things like that. And so what we're trying to do is match the weight and the thrust values. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to see how much thrust it actually takes to get this done. And, you can have too much of a good thing in this particular case.
I want to say this is the final draft. There may be one more reset, but this is like maybe 20% power, and we've already going 100 meters per second, and I'm going to come up to 200 meters per second. And there's a mission clock in the top left, so even if I'm time accelerating, you're getting we
just broke the sound barrier by the other runway.
No, not quite. We're only doing 250 meters per second.
Okay, well, it looks like anyway. There we go.
Yeah, so that was where I realized that the landing gear is actually causing drag, so we have to make sure you pull those up. So, maybe this is the last one, but the point is the maximum potential engine power you have in the Hornet is enough to destroy you in almost any level of atmosphere. So I very, very carefully, and then any second now we're just gonna punch it, and we're gonna see how fast we can go at very low altitude. And the answer is, I'm pretty sure we just had a mech jeb come on and say, "Hey, you're about to blow up. You might want to turn that off." So yeah, the mod mech jeb is actually trying to stop me from basically killing the ship from so much power.
Oh yeah.
Instantly goes to 15 Gs. Right, this is 5,000 meters off the ground.
We're doing 1,200 meters a second, 100 meters in atmosphere.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a light display though. Say that much.
Yeah, when you're in low atmosphere and you have re-entry effects, you're going too fast.
No, there we go.
That's right. I ended up going too aggressive on this one and ripping all the wings off, and therefore removing my center of lift, because we're still low enough in the atmosphere where lift actually matters.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that will be interesting with Star Citizen, because personally, I don't care if they want to fake certain things. I don't
either. I mean, there's just that, I get the idea of wanting to have ships look nice and all that. I don't care if there's ghost thrusters and things like that. But I like the physics and things behind it to be as promised. The game was supposed to be. And I'm not saying I want Kerbal, but what I'm saying is that I'd like them to apply physics correctly, especially when it comes to thrust values and things like that. And it's important for them the same way that they've applied all the size 1s and size 2s and size 3 weapons are all fit within the same box. That size 1 engines generate a certain amount, size 2 generate, and obviously there'll be modifications up and down, maybe more fuel, more thrust, but basically within that context. And then they can start designing ships more uniformly. And to look, since we have planets and atmosphere now, to me, the Hornet's kind of been the center of all their design. So why don't they go back, find out how much kilonewtons it's going to take for a Hornet to get to space from ground, build on that, and then build around that. Like, here's the size of the engine, here's what it's able to do, here's what we need. And then,
by the way, in Kerbal Space Program, in a replicant to weight and thrust, it's only about 150 at minimum and about 200 at maximum.
Yeah. So yeah, this is absolutely just. I think you're gonna make it on this one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the final.
That hull would be just so singed.
Well, the thing is, let's see. The space shuttle is actually not made out of any metal. It had.
It's a silicon. I've actually seen it. It's like almost like sand-like. A lot of the plates.
Well, it's a silicon.
Yeah, that's what I said. Sand like silicon.
Yeah, but the hull itself, it's actually like tarp.
The pilot's awake.
Oh, hey, finally. Yeah, but the actual hull of the space shuttle is kind of like a very heavy tarp. Basically, the same thing that they make the spacesuits out.
Yeah, here we skip a little bit, and you're gonna be doing 44 kilometers a second with this. This is the Hornet's thrust ratios that we saw on the.
Now that we're in space, we're not gonna blow up.
Oh yeah, but we're looking at he's heading towards the moon here. He's gonna hit 4,400 meters per second. Who wouldn't like to have that in the persistent universe, huh? Who's gonna catch up to you with that? But yeah, this is real time, and you're gonna watch him literally fly past the moon. Like this is him actually. You can see it getting bigger because he's actually approaching it that fast. He's 44,442.4 meters per second, and this is insane. The
bars that are on right now. The engines are so hot that it's actually heating up the wings.
Yeah,
that is what those bars are.
And here's the thing too. Here's a technique he's doing where he's basically turning the ship around to slow it down. You see, some of these ships in Star Citizen, they don't have very big retros, and I think that basically it's realistic to say that it takes longer to slow down to speed up if you're using less powerful retros. But
instantly blackout on the pilot.
Yeah, exactly. Here he's using his mains to cut speed down and kick it the other way. An advanced piloting maneuver in a fighter in space, if your mains were the main source of power, which they should be, ideally speaking, would be to spin the ship and kick it like this with the main engines.
This is without any time acceleration. We are watching the moon fly past us. And just keep in mind, for people that don't know, Kerbal Space Program is about 1/10 scale.
Still, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's between 1/10 and 1/8 or whatever. But still, if you can see a 1/10 size moon fly past you in realistic time, like literally like you're walking away from like a basketball or something. I mean, that's quick.
Yeah, so this is what I'd like to see them start addressing is more realistic mechanics. Like I said, it doesn't have to be Kerbal, but the thing is that they need to start by setting realistic definitions, realistic kilonewtons, set certain values as being for size 1, size 2, with variables therein. Different manufacturers do different things. And we can start having ships that all perform a little bit differently. Because right now, for the most part, it's kind of a circle fest. And there are some differences, but a large part of it comes down to, how good a ship is with gimbals, or how good it is, how much weaponry it carries, or how much hit points it has. And to get a distinction, to get a differentiation between how ship A and ship B flies, there needs to be severe differences. For example, when it comes to the strafing battle, I think it's about everything here on this one. Yeah, that's about everything on there. So when it comes to the whole strafing issue, the only ship that should be primarily focused on the strafing combat, or at least best at it, would be the Xi'an Scout. Now, it should be able to do like 60% of its like forward into strafing and stuff like that, because 50 or 60%, because it's basically 4 MAVs on there, and you can think of 2 MAVs kicking out, and the other ones could contribute a little bit if they can kick back far enough, like with some forward momentum. But the ships fly very homogeneous, and I think it has a large part to do with the fact that a lot of these statistics are faked. So let me go over here, talk to one of my favorite posters again, Alien War, and I'm going to read. I'm going to read a statement here, and I'm also going to leave a link down below to his forum post. It's on the old forums, but it's archived there, and it's called "Reworked Flight Model for Everyone." And so you can look that link down below and read what he says about this stuff. But I'm going to read you the statement, and we got into a kind of a private chat about this episode, and I asked if I could go ahead and quote him on this. He said it was okay. So, all right. So Alien War says, Also of important note is that thrusters are highly overpowered, such that the designers have plenty of room to play with, but rarely output to their full potential, and are actually capped far below due to resultant vector capping. The real values are actually the goal times. The thruster values have been set ridiculously high so no dev ever has to touch them again, and can simply play with goal times to balance ships. IFCS is the only thing that touches the thruster values, using what is necessary to achieve the designer's set values. IFCS does all it can to make the game work as if there was no simulation. Only when things go horribly wrong, destroy thrusters, does the simulation present itself to the player. That's essentially what a feed-forward flight control system does in modern aviation. Takes away the complexity. Which is great for modern aviation, but horrible for a video game. John Pritchett has to, and intends to, add all the error back into the simulation by faking what it should have originally done. He overbuilt the IFCS. I mean, the IFCS is super complicated, super smart, and totally what an aviation control designer would want for their planes. Modern IFCS actually use neural learning and learn to fly planes. But it simply misses the fact that, just like car enthusiasts and like manual cars, we as flight gamers like some manual direct control over things. That's what makes it raw, that's what makes it visceral, and that's what makes it immersive. Essentially, the system was made by John Pritchett so the designers never had to deal with the actual physics and could set the ships up as if it was an old school game without complicated simulations. Star Citizen is like a case study for game developers not understanding what makes a game fun. So, based on kind of what we showed you, some of what we talked about a little bit on this, I was planning on getting to acceleration, but I'm going to get to the root of that. That's like the values in and of itself that create all this. Basically, what he's saying is that they raised all these values so high, so all they have to do is set goal times for accelerations, goal times for how long. Here's the ship's top speed. Here's how long it takes to get to the speed. We got enough thrust behind it to do it. It's faked. If they would just set up actual thrust values on the engines, and they're talking about how they had that system where they could basically, they were going to be weighing the ships based upon like a digital water immersion, so to speak, where they could get the actual mass values of ships. So you have thrust, you have weight, and now you can have ships that fly based on their thrust to weight ratio. And you can start having ships that all fly a little bit differently. Some will be better on long sweeping attacks, some will be better at tight corners, tight infighting, but it would create a very, very wonderful flight model that would let everyone find a ship that suits them best and destroy that homogeneous nature that we currently see in most of the game.
Yeah. Jarvis and I, we had between, I'd say at the bare minimum, a half an hour discussion. But we were talking basically about the same thing for about an hour. And I mean, what we were talking about was kind of a video we've already done before. And so, like, part of me is like, I don't think we should talk about this. But at the same time, you know, we've learned a lot more about how the game works and about other games. And that's partly why we're going to bring in this all up again. And rather than having just one huge, you know, video that's like, here's everything all at once.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
it's
that was
too
like
much.
a 40. Yeah, it was like a 40-minute video.
And it's really too much. It's too deep. Just looking at this subject alone, just going over this took us a lot of time to go over, and that's just the nature of it, though. I mean, it's such a deep issue. And they spent so much time building all these systems. Like, okay, we have unified size for cargo. We have unified size for weapons. Why can't we have unified basic relative thrust values for different size engines at different size thrusters, and come up with something that basically all you need to do is take this thruster, put it on this ship with these engines, and it weighs this much, and then flight takes care of itself, because for the most part you've got your thrust to weight ratios. If they did this right,
it basically become a plug and play kind of system.
Right. The ships would basically, if they don't like the way it flies, then they can go back and say, okay, well, the modelers add another thruster here. Or they could say, well, this thruster is actually, we're going to increase its size because it's the internal components that basically are affected. It's like let's say the size 1 becomes a size 2 alpha thruster, something like it's considered a size 2, but barely. So it's like it can't be upgraded very far as a normal, like only halfway up like the normal.
Well,
whatever they could do.
To
something
briefly
like that.
touch on what we were talking about before, is if you set your things between, like, for example, we were saying, like, if you had size 1 engines, they're between, like, 1 kilonewton of thrust, because obviously they have to have some lower range, all the way up to, say, like 200. Give them this. Here's your grace period, and then et cetera, whatever grace period you want for your sizes go up. Then you can be like, okay, well, we need this much to get the speed we want. Well, that's fine. So you make it, okay, it's designed by these people because they have higher end engines, and what it is like, oh, well, because it's this engine, it has like more fuel, like it uses more fuel, or it's heavier,
right?
And you can just add those extra values in based on manufacturer, and then you still are keeping
modifications.
Yeah, you can still have modifications, or maybe what it is, you get to a point where, like, oh, well, you can't mod this engine. This engine is already at peak performance. There's nothing to do to this engine. But it would also add the option for other ships, new ships that aren't even done yet, where, like, oh, well, we don't want to put a size 2 engine on here. What we're going to do is we're going to put 2 size 1s on here, and that'll be equivalent to a one size 2 or something.
Yeah, or something along those lines. Or maybe it's a little bit more powerful than the 2 size 1s are more effective than the size 2, but they burn more fuel, or whatever you come up with. But be consistent. Come up with things that if you're consistent with how you design things, this will take care of itself. And I really think the flight model, because of this one issue alone, the fact that they threw the numbers up there so high, and they're just setting times and speeds. To me, what this is saying to me, and there's no nice way to say it, is that the flight model... It's
not a flight model.
It's rotten to the core. The flight model is rotten to the very core. And they need to basically sit here and come up with real values and stop faking all the data. Let the game happen. Let this stuff... Let the ships fly like ships. Stop just arcading everything and just make the game that was advertised. Because if you go back and watch any of these commercials on any of these ships... Anyway, all the way back to the initial Kickstarter, you will not see combat today looking anything like any of that whatsoever. And this is the part of the problem that's leading back into pacings, because how do you even balance something like that when it's all arbitrary values at the core?
I have made up a number.
Yeah.
This is the number I will choose because it sounds good in my head.
Yeah, you can't do that. You just can't. So anyway, guys, leave your thoughts down below about all this. And if you didn't watch the last video we had, the last BlastCast with the talking about the virtual stick, feel free to give that a watch too. If you want to give feedback on that as well. But this is a really deep subject, and we're going to keep digging into this. And I hope that this issue is addressed when Item System 2.0 comes out, because this is well overdue. And this could have been addressed a long time ago, but now with power settings and adjustments inside your ship being more thorough, and systems relying on one another, now is the time to make this happen. All right, guys. Well, we will catch you next time on the BlastCast, or maybe on Assistant's Corner. Depends how many questions we get. I don't like making junk videos just for the heck of it. We will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.